Hi, I'm Jesse McQuarters, editor of Stat Brand Studio, and I'm here at the 2025 Stat Summit with Dr. Diana Gallagher, who's head of clinical development for MS, Immunology and Alzheimer's at Biogen. Dr. Gallagher, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me.
So tell me a little bit about Biogen's aspirations in lupus. Why did Biogen identify lupus as an area of unmet need and something that the organization really wanted to pursue?
Yeah, thanks for the question. There's a multitude of reasons, but I would say, in particular, the sort of immunological basis, the significant unmet need, the fact that we think there's a couple different mechanisms of action we can target, and that we can sort of effectively and efficiently run clinical trials. And that's been a journey. We've been in lupus now for, more than 15 years working away. So it's really exciting to now be on the precipice of some late stage results.
Fantastic. An enormously complicated condition, a lot, again, very heterogeneous. Tell me a little bit about how it affects people and that a little bit.
Sure. So lupus, you're right. No two patients have the same journey with lupus, but it typically affects women, so 90% female predominance. Traditionally between 15 years old, so quite young, and 45. So these are young women, kind of, either off in college or first job, certainly kind of in, their period of their life where they're establishing themselves, and get this diagnosis, and then they go to look it up, and it's quite, daunting, right? To be told you have an autoimmune condition, it's lifelong. We can't tell you all the different organ systems, but any organ system can become involved. For many of these folks, they've been on a journey even to get the diagnosis in the first place. So it can be quite challenging. But once they get that diagnosis, and they get into care. What's exciting now is there are a few options that are approved medicines specifically for lupus, but there's also a lot going on in the clinical trial landscape. And so for Biogen, I think given our history in immunology, I could draw a parallel perhaps between MS. So we were one of the first companies to ever bring medicines to MS, and MS is a very different disease than lupus, but it's female predominant, has a lot of neuroimmune but immunologic elements to it. It's young patients, it's relapsing and remitting, and it's lifelong. And to have brought multiple products there, I think we can bring a lot of that sort of learnings towards lupus.
Absolutely. And when I think of Biogen, it's certainly a company that tackles complex problems. And tell me a little bit about how that DNA of the company influences, first of all, where you decide to work, but then also, how you approach something like lupus.
Absolutely. So I think that the idea that really anchored always in the science, and then bringing the best medicines to patients. So what's really nice about the arc of lupus is that we've been working in immunology, for such a long time. But it's going to take multiple, I think, mechanisms of action to bring patients all the way to adequate disease control. Particularly, sometimes they might need an agent that, is a biologic and IV or, subcutaneously administered, but maybe, they can get to periods where they can be on an oral molecule. That's attractive to us because we have capabilities in all those places. We can go after multiple biological sort of targets, and then we have a really strong clinical trial infrastructure. And it's taken the field, but also all of us time to really learn when you're executing large global phase 3 studies, how to set it up so we recruit the right patients, we have the right inclusion-exclusion criteria, we have the right sites with the investigators that we know really well, we control or at least have a deep understanding of the background medicines that they might be on, the steroid tapering. So it's really been a journey in all the way across. It sort of challenges every element of drug discovery and development. And as you said, we like that. We like tackling challenges like that.
Absolutely. And tell me about, yes, like teasing out that signal within the noise of a clinical trial. Again, I imagine it's extraordinarily complex if it's a disease that flares up and down and kind of goes into remission. Tell me a little bit about how you design a trial that meets patients' needs and gives results that truly serve patients.
I think there's a couple ways you can go about that. I mean, first and foremost, it's right target and right patient. So you really want to be taking a mechanism of action into a trial that has patients with the disease that we think will be met by that mechanism. So you can do that a few different ways. One is very carefully with the inclusion-exclusion criteria. You may say, hey, this asset we think is moderate to severe. And so not everyone's going to qualify for this trial, and that's okay. But we want to see, hey, have you flared? What has your disease course directionally? No promises what your disease is going to do, but generally speaking, how has it behaved? And are you uncontrolled on standard of care? That's a certain cohort of patients that we would put into a trial that we think this medicine is best suited for. So that's one way we go about it.
All right. And I know you oversee clinical development for MS, immunology, and Alzheimer's. Definitely, a vast area. Tell me a little bit about the team that's behind Biogen's lupus efforts.
We have a terrific team for all three of those areas, I have to say. But the lupus team has been together for a number of years. I mean, I've been at Biogen over a decade. Many of the folks working on these assets, we brought some of them, some folks have been there from the time things were in the labs to now being, in these large late-stage studies. And it's a team sport, I always say. Drug development is the ultimate team sport. So we have tremendous clinical clinicians, right, who have practiced, and seen these patients. So they really understand, okay, you were a practicing doctor, walk through, like in a clinic, how you would get this patient first to say, this trial interests me, then to have the number of visits and to spend the time at the visits, right? It's a big, commitment to be in trials. So they help us look through that. We have tremendous, of course, biomarkers folks who are thinking about, in all of our disease areas, what should we collect? How do we collect it and bank it? We have folks working, just incredible regulatory capabilities as well as statistics, sort of helping us figure out the powering. And so all of that is necessary. And then on either sides of that, we have a research team who's really incredible and has been built up, particularly in the past few years. Big research team building up that we work with a lot. And then on the other side, medical affairs, who really help us sort of connect with, as we think about generating additional data beyond the trials to make it meaningful. Our commercial teams who think about access, right? We're not done until we get these medicines all the way over the line and available to as many patients that can be globally, accessed and reimbursed. So all of that kind of goes in, and and it's a close-knit group because we have to have this deep understanding of lupus.
Absolutely. And I imagine you draw on your own experiences as a clinician and working in this area, to inform some of these things too, right?
Absolutely, yeah. So I trained in internal medicine, and then I went on to do pulmonary and critical care medicine. I'm in intensive care unit time. So you see patients really with all aspects of this disease, from milder forms to, profoundly impacted, even critically ill, with lupus. So we want to develop medicines that treat them wherever they are in that journey. In the beginning, later in the stages, mild, moderate, severe, because there needs to be holistic care available so that every lupus patient, can have their optimized quality of life.
Absolutely. Well, yeah, tell me what that next, year, 2 years, 5 years, 10 years looks like, because certainly we see the example in cancer treatments, we're really in this era of precision medicine, really individualized treatments. Is that what the treatment of lupus looks like?
I think we're going to see that, yeah. I think we're going to start to see, first of all, multiple sort of approved mechanisms with disease-modifying therapy. I think we're going to start to see things coming across, which also are oral agents that allow patients to have maintenance. As you see the sort of guidelines really pressuring to get the patients off or on minimal steroids, that's going to control their disease. It's not just going to spontaneously resolve. You can't just take them off the steroids without replacing. So I think that's going to really push I think first, an uptake of different modalities in order to be steroid sparing, and that's pretty exciting.
Yeah. Can you go into a little more detail about that? Because I know current standard of care, certainly utilizes steroids, a huge amount. What are the complications with that? What are some of the concerns, and why generally choose your height and move off of steroids?
Yeah. So I think steroids can be necessary, absolutely, particularly pulsing patients with a high dose of steroids. If nothing else is, they're controlling their disease. We see patients go on to other chemotherapeutic agents when nothing's controlling their disease. But it's never intended to be something used, if you're diagnosed at 17, to be used like your whole life. And that's because of the multiple complications from chronic steroid use, from bone density, an increased risk of fractures, to multiple metabolic sort of complications, to infection risk, to diabetes, and other complications, cataracts. So it's this idea of, if you need it, it's there, but it shouldn't sort of be this constant thing on the background, given the sort of benefit risk profile.
Absolutely, and then looking forward, it seems like there's a lot of things that can really supplement that as a treatment option.
That's our hope. Yeah.
All right. Well, as we wrap things up, tell me, the best part of your job. You've had this amazing journey from, working at the bedside to certainly leading this global team. What drives you every day?
Oh yeah, it's definitely, I would say, probably three things. It's the people, getting to work with incredible people, as I mentioned, who sort of tackle all manner of problems, like in drug development. Working on a terrific pipeline, because we really have, amazing sort of products and assets that we're trying to figure out if we can bring them. And then the passion. It takes a lot of work. Most things fail, right? Not everything works. So when you're surrounded with people who are like, okay, let's try to figure this out, and you really work together, and the patients are at center, and you kind of have this unified mission, it's pretty exciting. It's hard to beat.
Dr. Gallagher, thank you so much for talking about your work and the work that Biogen's doing. Really great to talk with you today.
You as well. Thank you.